Here's what happened. Earlier today, I had a few hours to be able to take a nap, and it was so good, so needed for my body. And then I was able to release the guilt that can sometimes come up, or the shame of like getting into rest mode, because the past few weeks have been a lot of pushing and really trying to work hard towards different areas in my life for the vision I have for my life. So to pull out of that, of putting in the reps and to get into then rest mode, that can feel really intense for a shift for the body if you're not used to it. And then that can create this friction. And then through that friction, emotions can come up of like the guilt or the shame. And what I want to tell you is, one, that's natural if you're driven and you're really wanting to push yourself. But at the same time, you don't have to then lean in and just be in it for that guilt and that shame and cause that to just sit in there. You can move through it. And what is really important to come back to help move through, so that you are not headed towards burnout and getting dragged by the burnout beast, are these foundational burnout-proof habits for your life. And what I want to get into is how to choose these habits for yourself. And I go back to a quote from a mentor of mine, John Butcher. It's like, there is no one right way, but there is a right way for you. And I'm really excited for you to dive into it for yourself. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. I want to say thank you for being here. Like, you could be doing a bunch of different stuff and there can be a lot of distractions that come up. So by you being here, it does say something when it comes to how to choose your burnout proof habits. And I want to deliver for you in this conversation. So if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe and follow the show. I have a few commitments for you. One is to continue to grow the show. So by you subscribing and following the show, if you haven't done it yet, that's going to help in that commitment of growing the show. The other one is to be honest with you, sharing the true experience, the what really goes on in this process. And sometimes it can feel boring. It's unsexy in a lot of ways. But I feel online and in person, sometimes we want to just share like the cool one side of it, of like, oh, the epicness of what's happening in our life, without sharing the full the full picture. And that's what I want to do for you, is to be honest, even when it is very uncomfortable to share. So that's another commitment I have. And then the other one is to improve as a storyteller, improve as a researcher for the information I'm gathering and sharing with you, and improve as an interviewer for the questions I ask guests that are coming on to share their insights on this mission of Make Burnout Extinct. So if this is your first time here, welcome. And so excited that you're part of this community, and then fired up for you taking the time to be here too. When I think about this, getting into it today, of how to choose your burnout proof habits, I feel like I haven't really taken the time to take a whole conversation to get into this and really break it down. There's been so many new updates since the beginning of this show. So I want to be able to share foundational information for you to hold on to. And then I want to get into some examples. I went to ChatGPT and just asked some quick examples for burnout proof habits to share that with you to create some inspiration. And then getting into understanding how to reflect back on your day, of noticing what are the sensations, body sensations, and the feelings that come up that can help reinforce that this is a habit that is going to be a burnout proof habit for you. And I'll go through that process as well, and then have some time to like be able to like reflect on this and be able to take a moment to go through like a body scan, to then be able to come back to, okay, what are going to be these habits for yourself to reinforce it, create clarity for yourself. So that'll be cool. It's like, both it's a little bit of a guided meditation with visualization, sprinkle on top body scan, and it'll be really cool to go through that with you. So let me come back to the foundational information, and to think, the amount of conversations, information shared on this show, it's helped me to really create some simple information to be able to share with you. The first is going back to the body. Being able to remind yourself that burnout is a result of us not either listening to the body signals that are telling us that we are moving towards hitting burnout, or it's just we're not able to recognize those signals. And with burnout, how I define it is, burnout is when you have a major life transition that is forced on you. You did not choose it. It just happens. due to, like, again, not realizing the signals that are coming up in the body, or just you realize, oh shit, like I was not aware of these signals that were coming up, and now looking back, I can recognize the path that got me here. For me, that goes back to my story of hitting burnout in 2018 after the social media conference that I hosted, where emotionally and physically I was drained. Like, I lied so much in that process to my team, to myself, of how I felt. I felt like I had to have all the weight on my shoulders for the pressure of this event, and had to show like this perfect version of myself to other people, and not be able to go out there and ask for help and support. And that costed me then to hit burnout, where I could barely get out of bed. I eventually, after hitting my burnout, had to move back in with my parents, because financially I couldn't support myself, as well as I felt emotionally I was a really tough place. And what I don't want to have happen for you are those life transitions that are forced on you without you understanding what is going on from the body, right? Because I do believe we can make burnout extinct if we're actually listening to our body and those signals that come up, and then being able to actually recognize what the hell those signals are, and then the behaviors that we can change in order to move towards making burnout extinct. And it is like this spectrum that I've talked about before, where on one end you've hit burnout, and then on the other end you've made burnout extinct. And it's your habits, which I want to get into for these burnout proof habits of how you choose them. It's your habits that decide where you land. And so there are going to be some habits that are going to drain you, but are going to help you to move forward in certain areas of your life. Especially I think about with career. It's like, you may not like public speaking, but if that's going to help be able to grow your career in certain areas, and you're not going to be doing it consistently, but you do have those moments where you got to step up and do it, like that can be then a habit that could drain you. Where then you have to make sure that you have these burnout proof habits to help you to recharge and be able to support you during those moments where that happens, where, let's say, instead of it being every day, you're doing some form of public speaking, which, I mean, I would argue public speaking is even a conversation with one person. But let's say like a big presentation, like you have to do that weekly or monthly rather than daily. But that's still, you got to prepare for those moments that come up where you're going to feel drained. And then for those habits, I come back to, it's the draining habits that can lead you towards hitting burnout and go through the chronic exhaustion, that first red flag of burnout, to feel extremely tired and depleted with like decision fatigue. So like all these things that can start to compound over time. And then you have the habits that are energizing for you and that help you to recharge and get you excited, to be able to show up. And there's a lightness there, there's an openness there, an expansiveness there. Now, coming back into the body, it's remembering that the body is like a balloon. Like, it can fill up to a certain amount of the stress responses. And it's hard because I want to help educate in the standpoint of like your body. So stress can build in the body. And what's happening is it's a stress response from a perceived threat, externally or internally. Like, you think about externally, it's, you're thinking someone is dangerous, and so you get into this heightened mode. Or if you were to go way back, is the idea of like this saber-toothed tiger coming right in front, and you have to deal with it. Like, we're having so many of these moments come up in our modern day, because that the body wants to keep you safe, and so the threat could be something or someone that is dangerous, that's external, or it could be internal, are tornado thoughts that happen of the worry that can build of like, oh man, am I going to be able to make my bills today, or make my bills this month? Am I going to be able to get that promotion? Am I going to be able to grow my business? Like, that can be those perceived threats that create a stress response from the body. And so for the levels of stress, like, it can handle a certain capacity of that, where, the adrenaline hormone and then the cortisol hormones get pumped into the body and we get alert and we're focused. But then also the overwhelm. The body can handle a certain amount of overwhelm, of anxiety. Like, it is this badass entity, is how I like to think about it for the body, right? And when we can recognize that it can fill up to a certain amount, but then there's a certain point where the balloon is going to pop, and that's hitting burnout, then it doesn't feel like every day is life or death, because you've gotten your body to this point. right? It's gone through a lot of potential challenges, a lot of shit it's had to deal with, but it is resilient. We just got to take the moment to be able to take care of it, and like a balloon, release some of that air out of the balloon so it can come back into harmony of being able to feel like it's at this solid level for yourself. And coming back to these habits and your burnout proof habits, that these burnout proof habits are helping you to release that air from the body. It's where that recharge, the energizing feeling comes in. So how do you choose? That's something to think about. So for these habits, what I did is I went to ChatGPT and I just asked, like, what are some examples of burnout proof habits? And I want to share some examples for you to inspire you. And I've talked about it already a bunch, which is recharge, energized, feel openness, feel expansive, feel this lightness after putting in the rep for the habit. And I want to get into some of these examples that could be helpful for you. So I got 20 for you. So I'm going to just go through them so you can start to figure out what are going to be these burnout proof habits for yourself. So it actually broke it down into like physical habits. And then I think what else? Emotional habits, social habits, which I thought was cool. So let me go through them. First one, morning stretching routine. That's one I do as well. Daily walks is another one. Strength training. So a workout where actually your body's going into a stress response with the workout, but then at the end with the release of the endorphins for the pain, then it can feel good at the end. So with some of these, there can be habits that can actually create a stress response from the body. But when you can close out the habit and then you feel good afterwards, that is still in my mind considered a burnout proof habit. The other one is hydration check-ins, which I thought was cool. They put that in there. So staying hydrated. Meal prep Sundays, so preparing your meals, and then the emotional habits. So you got like daily gratitude practice, emotional check-ins, so being able to set a timer to pause and connect back to your feelings, journaling for reflection, setting emotional boundaries, being able to say no to unnecessary commitments, breath work. So just coming back to your body, to your breath, and consciously taking deep breaths in. You can do that through the nose, out through the mouth. Then you get the mental habits. Mental habits, single tasking. So focusing on just one task at a time. That can really help if you could just get distracted a lot, like I do. Daily planning, so being able to understand like what are your 3 tasks. Reading for relaxation, letting your mind wander. Mind decluttering. So especially I think about these open loops that can create it. That's with burnout. It doesn't happen overnight. And what can happen is you create these open stress loops that just never get closed. And that just builds more and more of this overwhelm in the body and this pressure in the body. And when you're doing that over the consistency of days, weeks, months, you're going to then get dragged by the burnout beast for a one-way ticket to hitting burnout. And so one that has come up for me recently of really focusing in on is mind decluttering. If I have something of like a response I got to send to someone, or, even something as simple as like, I see the trash is full, let me take out the trash and be able to get a new bag for the trash can. Like something like that to take away those tasks is so helpful. If it can get done in just a few minutes, get it done. The other one is screen free wind down. I don't even know what is this? Turn off screen 30 minutes before sleeping. Okay. It's an interesting name for it. The other one. Okay. So now we got social habits. So regular connection time, being able to schedule weekly calls with close friends, being able to connect in person, celebrating wins. I've talked about this habit before. It's such a powerful burnout-proof habit of celebrating your small successes, putting in the reps. Even celebrating wins, how they put it is like celebrating wins with friends, partner, being able to, the other one is to have weekly fun activities. So that's also so important, is to connect back to fun. Like when we're in it and we're moving towards hitting burnout, you can lose the sense sometimes of what is fun for you. The other one, practicing active listening. So I think that being present is how I look at that for conversations. Support system check-ins, being able to create that support system for yourself, even if it just starts with you and coming back to yourself, being able to have that support system and then building it out from there. So those are some examples to help you with inspiration of like what could be burnout proof habits to choose for yourself. Now I want to get into like the practical strategy of how to start implementing this, because what's important is consistency. So starting small, and then consistency for the majority of the days in the week to build this momentum of putting in the reps. Those are the two things to really focus in on for these habits for yourself. So it's reflecting back on like, okay, well, what could be habits where I'm increasing the frequency, even if it's something like, so I think about frequency, it could be doing it consistently for the majority of the days, or even something that you're doing multiple times in the day. So when I think about that in my own experience, few burnout-proof habits come up to mind. One is celebrating. I celebrate after I honor a commitment. If that is saying, I'm going to get up when I get up before 8 a.m., that's a habit I have. And so if I do that, I celebrate. And that's like a full body celebration. So I tap my shoulders on my arms, raise my arms up like this. And I go, yeah, like I throw them down. But it didn't start that way. Like how it started was more like, woo. So I've talked about this so many times of celebration, and there's a reason why, because it is powerful. It can cause the body to then release dopamine. And that is creating a reward system when I'm physically celebrating and I'm reminding the body that I want more of this. So that is a habit that I consider a burnout proof habit. It helps me to be proud of myself. It helps me to be motivated to move forward and create that momentum. And I'm doing this also multiple times in the day. So that's reinforcing this as putting in the reps for consistency. And it's building more of the energizing feeling for myself to be moving towards making burnout extinct. So super helpful. The other one I think about is hydration. Like actually I just got a recent one, a silver, or not silver. I mean, it's silver color, but stainless steel water bottle. And being able to have that as a reminder to drink water throughout the day is so helpful for a burnout proof habit to stay hydrated. Another one is making sure I'm getting foods that I'm eating that are nourishing for me, that feel energizing for me. Being able to have discovered that of what types of fruits, types of vegetables, proteins, being able to get into sources of fat, like what foods are going to feel nourishing for me. And that took a little bit of time to explore that, but that is an area where you can go into and explore for yourself. But it comes back to those two important factors. Start small. And then the other one is how can you be consistent for the majority of the days, if not have those habits that are, it's that consistency for the majority of the days. And even on the next level is how to be consistent throughout the day with this habit. So that's to give you some more ideas to reflect on. And then I want to reinforce this for the feeling. Like this shit is so important for the feeling, where you come back to, is this expansive for you? Does it feel light? Is it openness after you complete the habit? Do you feel less brain fog? Do you feel more? Do you feel strong if it's workout related? Do you feel proud of yourself? Those are some really important indicators that like you're on the right path to a burnout proof habit. And then it's being able to identify, okay, within those, which ones are going to be something that I know I'm going to be able to stay consistent with in the long term. And then coming back to starting small, I think about movement for me. That's another one that I focus in on as a burnout proof habit. Is instead of, if you haven't gone outside for like more than 30 minutes, and because that happens, I go back to this stat where 90% of Americans on average spend 90% of the time indoors. So roughly the amount of outside time is like 2 hours and 35 minutes, like around there. And I remembered there were days where I wouldn't even really get outside for like more than 30 minutes. So if you were like, okay, I don't get outside for 30 minutes, but I want to now push it for like 2 hours and 35 minutes of outside time and go for walks, that's a big jump. Like that's big. So we got to you got to take this back and realize that this is long term. You're working up towards this, because you can get caught up of like, this fear that you're not actually going to stick with it. And it's a fear that I want to take some more time later on in another conversation to really expand on. But it's like, it's this fear of like that you can try to go from, all in and really go full out with this. But the issue that can come up is it's coming from a place of fear of like, you don't know if you're going to actually stick with this. And I've talked about that before, of the habit formation process and these 3 phases to remember. So I'll share them quickly, but you got to remember that the more you understand something, the less scary it is. So you can come back to this commitment of this is for the long term, and then remember the body sensations in the habit formation process, it can help you to show up during the challenging moments and be able to put in the reps. Usually when people drop out from staying consistent. So for the 3 phases, you have the awkward phase for body sensations. So it's going to be awkward to try to implement this in your day-to-day life. It can feel kind of like, ugh, like, how do I do this? And then you have the resistance phase. So that's where a lot of times people can stop, is in that resistance phase where you notice like you could feel angry, you could feel frustrated, it feels like you're hitting against an imaginary wall for the body, and you really don't even want to like show up and put those reps in. That's where you got to give yourself grace of honoring the emotions that are coming up, being able to process it, but to not push it down, but then to move through it and to continue to show up and put those reps in, take the breaks where you need to take the breaks, but continue to show up as best you can for the consistency. Because with anything new for the body, it can create uncertainty, and that response that can come up is a fear response. It can then, for the body, when it gets into that fear response, is trying to pull you back to your old ways because it wants to keep you safe. And so going back to what is familiar. And so that's where you can go back to these old patterns. You're like, shit, why do I just keep going back to these old patterns of staying inside and not getting outside for my walks? Well, because with that new, when you're putting in the reps, that new habit, and that uncertainty that comes up, you're actually also getting really close. If you've been doing this consistently for putting the reps in, and you're noticing you're hitting the resistance phase, you're doing it to a point where the body's like, oh shit, you might actually make this like a habit that stays with you permanently. And so with something new, that's going to create a new path for your future, and that's going to create a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. So of course that can be scary for feeling like that's natural, that can come up. So there is then that resistance phase that moves, though, because it comes back to when you're in that resistance phase, you got to remember you're actually then close to that other phase, which is the autopilot phase. And this is where it becomes less friction. You're not even really, there's moments where you don't even think about it, but you're just showing up and you're going outside for the walk. Like you just put on your shoes and you're like, oh, I'm at the door. Like, here we go. And you're not putting a lot of conscious energy towards that. So that's in the autopilot phase. And what happens is it's not like a linear process where once you get to the autopilot phase, you stay there, because life happens. Like you're going to have challenges that come your way. You're going to have moments of new habits you're adding in. So sometimes with a habit, it has to go through this cycle, is how you can think about it, this cycle multiple times. So when you can remember that, it can help you to prepare for these sensations that can come up and realize that you're on track. Like you're not off track. There's not potentially something wrong. But as long as you're taking the time to recognize that these signals you're moving through these phases and you're noticing the changes of the signals, but it can just help you to realize, oh, okay, like I am on the track. I can make sure I'm taking the breaks if it gets too much, because again, nobody's perfect. You're not expected to be having to show up every day and putting those reps in. It's more about how the consistency of it for the majority of the days. And these habits are supposed to be energizing and recharging for you, right? So it's supposed to actually help you to feel like you're building momentum and feel going back to that energizing feeling, like to be able to feel the lightness, the openness, the expansiveness. So that's, again, important to make sure that you understand that for those phases and the body sensations. Now, what I want to do is take a moment here to go through a body scan for you to come back to the body and to be able to decide what are those 1 or 2 burnout-proof habits to choose to start implementing in the next few days. And you do this for a sequence of like 14 days. I've shared another one before of the Momentum 14-day challenge. You can go to that conversation to really dive into this, but it's being able right now to be able to choose those burnout-proof habits for yourself. So what I want you to do is if you are driving, keep your eyes open, but otherwise, if you can get to a space where you won't be distracted for a few minutes, if you're in a room or if you're outside, just having that moment to connect back to your body and specifically connecting back to your breath. So what you can do now is be able to take a deep breath in through the nose And then release out through the mouth. Getting settled into the space. You can even start to point to a few items around the room. This might be familiar for those that have done this before. You get it where it's coming back into the present moment. So I'm seeing a picture. I see a mirror. I see books. I'm coming back into this space, realizing that I may have a lot of shit I got to deal with after this. I may have had a lot of shit before this, but in this moment, you're present. You're here. As you continue to breathe in and breathe out. Now, going through all that was shared, what is that one or two habits that are coming up for you that you feel are your burnout-proof habits? The ones that you may have gotten off track, that could be a morning walk, could be staying hydrated, could be having that time to journal. You really liked it when you used to do that. What are those habits for you? Having the space to reflect on that. The habits that are energizing, that help you to recharge, that can build that momentum for you. The habits that maintain yourself and your energy in order to then move forward in life towards who it is you want to become, the vision you have for your life. The taking care of you. And it's so important to take care of ourselves because then we're able to show up and take care of other people. And I know that's something that's really important for you, is to make sure that all the other people in your life are taken care of, the community taken care of. You're wanting to give and share that support, but you cannot forget about yourself. It does not help if you are moving to a one-way ticket to hitting burnout. So as you continue focusing on your breath in and your breath out, I want to bring your awareness up to the head. So we're going to go through a body scan, especially if you're still trying to figure out what are going to be those burnout-proof habits for yourself. So coming back to your head, noticing what are the sensations that come up. You can even put your hands on your head if you want, like I'm doing. I got my eyes closed. I'm going to go closing them and opening them. I'll be going back and forth. But then let's bring our awareness down to your ears. Notice different ears, even as you put your fingers rubbing your ears, moving on down to cheeks, chin, to your throat, and the shoulders. Relaxing your shoulders. If you feel like they're tensed up, you can kind of like squeeze them and then release. Coming down to the chest, to the stomach. Bring your awareness now to your arms. You can even wiggle your fingers if you want. Doing that. Tend to your legs, knees, calves, to your feet. Even wiggling my toes a little bit here and there. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. What is that one burnout-proof habit that's coming up for you? And then write it down. Make a note of it mentally if you can't write it down right now. The one that you're going to start today. And if you can't start today, if you're listening to this right before bed, the one that you're going to start tomorrow. Just continue to breathe in and breathe out. Realizing that you are absolutely capable of this as a human being, to create these burnout-proof habits and to then have the consistency to support you in making burnout extinct. You have the capabilities as a human being. Our bodies are such a badass entity that are there to communicate with us, to let us know when we're headed towards burnout. It's just for us to take the moment, just a few minutes at times, to connect back of listening to our bodies, recognizing those signals, and then making the changes. Now, what you can do is bring your awareness on back into the space that you're in. If you have your eyes closed, take a moment to open up those eyes. Be able to look around the space. Feel grounded in the space. Feel, if you're sitting, you can feel your butt on the chair, feet on the ground, and you're here. And if you haven't heard it yet today, I want to tell you, I believe in you. You are capable, and you got this.